Konnichiwa, minasan. ありがとう。日本語が話せません。So I'll be doing this talk in English. I do have subtitles. I do apologize if the subtitles are a little bit weird. So I want to do a small introduction of who am I. So most of you haven't met me before. My name is Paul Fenwick. I'm PJF on Twitter and CPAN. And I founded a company called Perl's Training Australia about 10 or 15 years ago. And so I've been primarily teaching Perl as my job for more than a decade now. I'm the author of the AutoDie module. Some of you may have used that before. I really like it. It means you don't have to write all dies all over your code. And in 2010, I was lucky enough to receive a White Camel Award, which was a great honor. I'm also, which not many people know, the 2013 Dance Dance Immolation World Champion. And Dance Dance Immolation is a little bit like Dance Dance Revolution, except you're on fire. And that's actually me at the end of a combo having finished a song. So that was a lot of fun to do. So I do apologize for the subtitles. I used Google to do the subtitles. So some of them may be a little bit crazy, and I apologize if anything is a bit weird throughout this talk. So I love to track things. I love to keep data about everything which I do. I love to know, when do I go to sleep, and when do I wake up, and what am I eating. And I'll do things like I'll keep track of when do I go dancing. When do I go to dance lessons? And in fact, this is a B-Minder graph. I have software that charges me money. It fines me money if I don't go to my dance lessons on time. I have software that keeps track of how big is my inbox, because it always gets out of control, and I always need to make sure it gets back down again. And I even have software that keeps track of my mood, how happy I am. And then I can look to see that there are things which make me happy, or there are things which make me unhappy. And one thing which I do pretty much every day is I write down, here's everything I've accomplished, here's everything I've experienced, here's all the things I would like to remember about that day. And I used to just keep that in text files, and I'd never really look at them again. And then I discovered a wonderful little company called I Done This. And I Done This was just a small little startup. There was like a couple of people, but they had this really, really great idea. And it was brilliant. What they said is that we were going to record what you do each day, and then a year later, we're going to send you an email with here is what you were doing a year ago, or here's what you were doing 6 months ago, or here's what you're doing 1 month ago. And it was wonderful because I'd get all these memories which I wouldn't otherwise remember. I loved this, and I used it all the time, and I told all my friends about it. And and here's an example of what you might see. So here's what I was doing a year ago. And I thought this was awesome. Absolutely fantastic. Subarashi. And it was great until they turned it off. And they said, we're really sorry, but this is not a feature which is making us money anymore, so we're going to turn this off. And I was outraged. I was very upset with them for doing this. Now, I wasn't paying anything for the service, so I couldn't be too upset. But I wrote them a very strongly worded email that what they were doing might be wrong. And they apologized, they sympathized with me, but they said no. They said that really they were taking the business in a different direction, they were focusing on company teams, they were not going to be sending out these reminder emails. So I'm a good open source hacker, I'm well experienced with code, and so I took action when this happened. It's like, I can fix this. And so what I did is I wrote an API. They didn't have an API, so I wrote one for them. Then I wrote a command line client on top of that, so that I didn't have to use the web anymore, because I don't like using web browsers. I could do it all from the command line. And then I wrote a data export tool, so you could get all of your data out of their service in case you wanted to put it somewhere else or in case they went down. And then I re-implemented all the features that they had taken out that I really liked. And then I released it open source, so everybody could use this. And the first they heard about it was when I said, surprise, guys, I'm giving you these tools. Isn't it great? And I wasn't sure what their reaction was going to be here. I thought maybe they wouldn't be happy with this. But as it happened, they thought this was fantastic. They thought that if you wanted to use their products from the command line and have it send you email, what you were doing a year ago, they thought that was wonderful, and they actually helped me with the code. So that was good. It had a happy ending. But there isn't always a happy ending to these stories. And the truth of the matter is, there are lots of services out there are lots of products out there that you start using, and they die, they stop. They don't get used anymore. Or they get refeatured. They implement features that you don't want, and they become harder to use. And that's my situation with Facebook right now. Or they change the licenses, so they're going to use your data in a way that you don't want. And there's actually websites out there which will track, what services have been in existence, and when did they start, and when did they fall over. And there's even some specifically for Google. Google has lots and lots of services which is brought up and then has said, actually, we don't want this anymore. And recently, Google Reader came into that. So I want to encourage you to still use these services. I don't want to say, don't use other people's services, don't use web services, because these are wonderful things, and they add lots and lots of value. So I really think that you should be embracing the internet. You should be using the internet as much as you can. But at the same time, I really want you to embrace your data. I really want you to have control over how you use those services, how you have data in those services, what you can do with them. And even more so, I want you to embrace your experiences. So I wanted to use the I done this service from the command line, so I could write something that did that. I wanted those memory emails, something to remind me what I was doing a year ago, so I could write something for that. Now, for most people, that's a hard task. Most people have to put up with whatever they've been presented with. My friends who use Facebook can only use the web interface and the phone interface. They don't have any other options. But we do, because we're developers. And for us, data is like magic. We can change things. We can shape our experiences on the internet. So there's one tool that a lot of people know about called If This Then That. And you can say things like, when I change my photograph on this social network, I want it to change it on other social networks. Or when a new cartoon is posted, I want to get an SMS. Or all these other sorts of things. And it's also called YAPC. And it's really great. It's actually a really, really fantastic tool. It lets you do lots and lots of things. But there is a problem with YAPC. And that is that it runs in the cloud. It's on somebody else's server, which I don't get to control. I don't get to write my own extensions to it. If it doesn't support a service, I can't use it. And it kind of requires all of my data. It requires all of my authentication. And so it has all of my usernames and passwords for Facebook and Twitter and for my email and what my phone number is and everything like that. And I don't really want anyone to have all that data. I mean, the NSA probably does because they've been spying on everyone in the United States right now, but I don't want to voluntarily give this up. So I started writing my own tools. I wanted to keep control of my data. I started to write my own tools. And this is actually surprisingly simple, especially when you're working with Perl. So I am a very heavy user of Foursquare. I check in all the time so I can tell where I am, and I can put little notes in there. And all I wanted was something that was able to see, was I going to my dance lessons? And if so, it would update that graph that I showed you before. It wouldn't fine me money for missing a dance lesson. So that was my plan, to keep you guys doing dance lessons. And this was a very, very easy thing to implement in Perl. Perl has the mechanized module, which I'm sure a lot of you have used. And the mechanized module is fantastic for accessing anything that has a web service, all these REST APIs. And in the case of Foursquare, there's no Foursquare module on the CPAN because it's such a simple protocol. You can simply say, okay, I just want to get my check-ins, and it says, hey, here's where you are right now. Here's where you used to be. You have to add a little token onto the end of that, but it's not very hard. And then to figure out if I'm at a dance lesson, well, that was really simple. I walk through each of the check-ins I've got. I look at the venue name, and if that's equal to the place where I go dancing, then I'm dancing. I can do something with that data. But this was a way of me producing specific solutions. It didn't give me a way of doing generalized solutions. I wanted to be able to say, okay, well, I've got something that's watching Foursquare and feeds that data to a whole lot of things. I have something watching Twitter, which reads my Twitter data and feeds out to a whole lot of things. So I started up a project that I call my Exobrain. And this is very much a personal project. I'm the only person using this right now. But I think it's a great way of demonstrating what can be done, and all the code is online. You can download this and play with this if you want. So the Exobrain code that I have is designed to be a pluggable architecture. The idea is that you can talk to Facebook or Twitter or Foursquare or your email clients, or I'll show you a few other things in a moment, and you can plug these in as you need them. You can write your own recipes as you need them. You can extend it as you want. And it uses this wonderful message framework called ZeroMQ that some of you may have used before. ZeroMQ, there's lots of message frameworks out there. There's RabbitMQ, there's ZeroMQ, there's a bunch of other ones. But ZeroMQ had the best maintainer on CPAN. And so that's why I picked ZeroMQ to work with my project. One of the great things about ZeroMQ is that you can connect things and disconnect things whenever you like. So if I want to change a piece of code, I don't have to restart everything. I just restart that one process. If I need to set up a new service, I can plug that into a running system. So it's very, very flexible. It's easy to restart, and it's very easy to patch my code as well. The code itself, I'm going to show you just a very brief amount. If I want to be working with ZeroMQ, because this is useful in all sorts of contexts, all I do is, I do initialization, and then I can either, in the case of my code, I can publish, I can send messages out to the rest of my framework, or I can subscribe, I can read messages from the rest of my framework. And then all I do is I say, okay, I just want to connect to a known socket. And this web address doesn't, or this socket doesn't actually need to be open at the time. ZeroMQ will sit there and wait for something to appear on that, and will connect everything together. Now, as it is, my Exobrain actually has a little router that sits in the middle, which I'm not showing you here, but the idea is the same. The other nice thing with ZeroMQ is you can say, I'm going to subscribe to a particular type of packet. So you could say, I want to subscribe only to Foursquare packets, or I want to subscribe only to Facebook packets. And both of these, I've used this geo prefix in the front. I could just say I want geo packets. I want location data. I want to know where people are. And of course, once I've got a socket open, it's very easy for me to send messages, and it's very easy for me to receive messages. So ZeroMQ is a nice thing for me to work with under the hood, and of course I've wrapped lots of layers of abstraction on there. And really, that's what I want to be talking about today, is how do those interfaces work? What can I get my Exobrain to work with? So if you're writing something for my framework, you start off by using app_exobrain, which is the module. I'm not really sure about the app prefix. It's not on CPAN yet, because it originally was going to be like a single monolithic process. It's now grown since then. And for my example here, I want to read things from Twitter. I want to see what people are tweeting to me so I can respond to them. And we'll see what we can do with that in a second. And to set this up, very straightforward, I just call my constructors on both of them. And then, and this is like the whole code for my Twitter client, all I'm going to do is sit there and sleep for a while, and then I'm going to use my, my Twitter API, my net Twitter API, to say, hey, give me all the mentions since the last time I checked. Show me any new things that people have tweeted to me. I can walk through all those statuses, I can figure out, do they have tags, do they have timestamps, and then I'm going to send off a message to anything else that wants to listen to it. Now, nothing else on my Exobrain bus has to listen to this. You can just broadcast things if nobody's listening. The whole point is you can plug things in later on, which I'll do. The message is a little bit special. All the messages have this same sort of idea. They have a top-level namespace. So Twitter is in the social namespace. Facebook would also be in the social namespace, as would be Instagram. So if I want to see what people are doing on a social level, I can do that. And that might be different from having an email namespace, or something like a geo namespace where people are. I'm going to say this is coming from Twitter. I have a timestamp on there. And what I do is I actually supply the raw data which I got off the wire. Ideally, I'm going to process this somewhat. But if anything wants to see, well, what's the exact thing that came back from Twitter, I can show that. I also have a summary there. That's a human-readable summary that gets used in a whole lot of places in debugging. And then I have my actual data. So who is this from? What tags were there? What was the actual message? What was the timestamp? This is code that I've actually analyzed, and I've extracted those things. And then I sent it off to the bus. And at that point, I'm done. I can celebrate I don't have to worry about dealing with this message anymore. So let's pretend I've got myself a system. I've got tweets being squirted into this system. People are tweeting at me. What can I do with that? Well, one thing that I've wanted forever is a way of managing my to-do lists. And I'm terrible at putting things on my to-do list. I'm terrible at saying, oh yeah, I need to do that. So I want a way to let other people add tasks to my to-do list. Somebody say, hey Paul, could you do this for me? So the way in which you do that on Twitter, and this works right now if you want to try it in the audience, you tweet at me, at PJF, you write anything you want, and you just put a hash to-do tag at the end. And that's, for me, really, really useful at conferences. Because people will say, hey, you should read this book, or you should check out this piece of code, or you should fix my bug. And those are things people ask me to do all the time. On the back end, I use Remember the Milk to keep track of my to-do list. And that's what I'll show you now, how I can actually work with that. So using Remember the Milk, there's a Perl module for that, RTM agent. We set it up and we say, hey, I'm going to subscribe to my Exobrain. And then I'm going to say, hand me events. Give me things which I can look at. And this here is actually going to give me all events, not just tweets, because I might want to allow anything to add to my to-do list. I might want to let my friends on Facebook add to my to-do list, or provide some sort of a command line interface for this. And then all I'm doing is saying, check to see if there are some tags. If my tags contain to do, and I'm using smart match there, I don't know if Ricardo's in the audience, he'll tell me off for that. I don't know if he is. Smart match is going away or changing, but if there's a to-do in my list of tags, then I'm going to say, add this to my to-do list. And all I'm doing is grabbing the summary, whatever that human readable thing is off the wire, and I'm supplying a list there. So it doesn't all go into my inbox. There's a special list where people tweeting at me, they go in there first. So if people are, sending me links to Rick Astley or something, then I can, see them in there. But one of the great things which I can do with this is I can actually respond to what the person has sent me. So the person can say, I would like you to do this, and then I can say, thank you very much. That's on my to-do list. Or I can say, I'm really sorry, I had a problem. I can't do that. The way in which I do those responses is I grab the event and whatever text I want to send. If it's not something from Twitter, I'm going to say, well, I don't want to respond to that at the moment. My code only knows how to respond to things from Twitter. If it is from Twitter, we extract the user data, and then we have these things called intents. And an intent says, I would like for this to happen. In this case, I would like to tweet, and I just supply what the message is that I'm tweeting. So I would like to tweet this message. I'd like to send this user this message. I then send it off to the Exobrain bus, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. Something else will find it, and will tweet it out there. There's a code that I haven't shown you that does that. And sure enough, this works. So this happened a few days ago. A friend of mine in Melbourne said, oh, Paul, you're working really hard. You should, have a nice cup of tea or something, and put the to-do tag on there. And my Exobrain, which has its own Twitter account, says, thank you, I've added your to-do item to my to-do list, which then shows up on my phone. So I have built a number of things which plug into this system. I can check how many messages are in my inboxes. I can read and write to Twitter and Facebook. I can do to-do management. I can find out where I am. I can draw graphs on BMinder. And Habit RPG I'm going to show you in a moment. And in fact, it gets even better because some of the things on this list, like BMinder, will actually talk to other systems. And I can essentially use them as a proxy to get more data into my system. So one thing that I really wanted this for, probably the biggest reason why I wrote this system, is because there's a wonderful platform out there called Habit RPG. And what Habit RPG does is it turns your life into an 8-bit computer game. So you get experience points for doing things like committing to Git. And you lose experience points for eating junk food or staying up late. And it's really, really fun. But I don't want to have to maintain it myself. I want to automatically have these things updated. If I respond to an email, I want to get experience points for that. There's a wonderful Perl module which lets you talk to it called Web Service Habit RPG. And it lets you do everything. You never actually have to touch the web interface if you don't want to. So one of the workflows which I've implemented is that if I make a commit, a Git commit, and I upload that to GitHub, That goes to GitHub, and GitHub actually talks to Beeminder, and then Beeminder calls back to my Exobrain, and then my Exobrain goes to YAPC and gives me experience points so I can level up, and then it'll actually tweet about it as well. And so you have this wonderful cascade of things by simply joining these connectors together. And sure enough, you'll see things like this. Congratulations, you gained 7 experience points and 0.9 gold pieces for responding to email. Or omedetou gozaimasu, you gained 7.5 XP and almost 1 gold piece for a GitHub commit. So, as you can imagine, I have code here, lots of different systems which are all working together. How do I control them all? I don't want to start and stop them individually. And so there's this wonderful platform called YAPC. And what YAPC lets me do is it lets me say, here is a task, or here is a collection of tasks, and I can start them all, I can stop them all, I can stop individual ones, I can restart them. And it's very, very useful. So if I wanted to, we have this wonderful hierarchy there of all of my processes. I could do something like YAPC start Exobrain, and it starts up everything. Or I could say YAPC start exobrain.source, and it just loads up my source modules, things which give me data. Or YAPC start exobrain.classify, it starts up all my classifiers, the things which actually do, here are some data, what do I do with it, the smart parts. So if you're wondering what can the system do right now, if you want to download this from GitHub, what can you do with it right now? Well, it can give you experience point rewards for sending email, because that's something which I'm terrible at. You can accept to do tasks from Twitter, because that's something which I really enjoy. You can update Beeminder with all sorts of different graphs. Beeminder is great for graphing and making sure you stay on track. And you get experience points for pretty much anything you can read from Beeminder. So if I floss my teeth, I get experience points on YAPC. And if I go for a run, I get experience points on YAPC. And of course, there's also various debugging components there as well, if you want to use them. So if you're after the code, you can get it from github.com/pjf/exobrain. It needs a lot of work. At the moment, it is just me who is using Exobrain. So it's still very, very rough. But if you want a hand setting it up, I'm very, very happy to help with that. The one thing which I would love to do with this is make it easy for other people to install this on their machines. And I have this running both on my laptop, and I have a machine out in the cloud as well. So I think I have a little bit of extra time to answer any questions. So thank you very much for having me at YAPC Asia. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer?
So messages have a namespace, so you use like social or geo. Do you think tags? So messages have a namespace like social or geo. Do you think tags might work better, so that if, for example, you post to Facebook and include a geotag, then you can model that as having both social and geo, so your message bus could filter for either one?
質問は、メッセージにネームスペースがあるけれども、それの代わりにタグとかを使うのは、どうですかという質問です。
ありがとう。So I do think that tags would work better, because you can then arbitrarily say, I want to look for this, I want to look for that. The way in which ZeroMQ is built, however, is if you can say I want to explicitly filter on something at the start of the packet. So if you filter on geo, then ZeroMQ says I'm only going to give you geotags. If you filter on social, I'm only going to give you social packets. And that's fantastic from an efficiency standpoint. At the moment, the amount of traffic that's floating around in this bus really isn't that big, so I'm not too worried about that. And really what I might have is if you want to do things based only on tags, you just say, give me everything. And so I want to have a combination of namespaces and tags as well. Namespaces, you can be very efficient if you're specialized. Tags, you can be very smart if you want to.
ネームスペースを使うのは0MQの特性からして、フィルタリングがメッセージに対して聞くので、ネームスペースを使うといいと。タグを使う場合は全てのメッセージを受け取って、それから処理するということになるんですが、そのうちまた両方使えるようにすると面白いかもしれません。
source processes plugins are pulling data from services. If that's true, how about publishing a service just like web server, so that you can just let, for example, if you commit to Git, you can configure the GitHub host to connect directly to Exobrain rather than sending it to other services and pulling it from that.
宮川さん、それ自分で言ってもらっていいですか？
そうするプラグインっていうのがコーディングしているように見えたので、ウェブサーバーとかを立てて直接受け取れるようにすればもっと柔軟にメッセージが受信できるんじゃないかなという提案でした。
So I actually have both a polling system where we poll for data, but we also have callbacks already implemented. So vMinder, if you submit data to vMinder, it actually calls back to my system and says, hey, I have a new data point for you. And that happens very, very quickly. So there is actually very little stopping you from, in fact, if you grab the repository, there's a little data script in there. And the little data script just opens up a port and listens on it, and you can push things in, and it packages it up and it sends it off. So absolutely, you can not just hold for things, you can react to callbacks as well. And that's wonderful because it's so much easier to work with. You're not there constantly trying to say, hey, is there something here right now?
基本的にはポールでやってるんですけども、ポールの他にもちゃんとポールバックを呼び出す仕組みがあるので、そちらを使ってまさに言われた通りのことをやることが可能です。そっちの方が全然簡単なので、その例としてのサンプルも載ってるレポジションにあるので、それを使えばすぐにもそういったイベントをプッシュしてポールしておくことができるようになります。はい。他にはいらっしゃいますか？大丈夫ですか？いいですか？いいですか？はい、じゃあありがとうございました。
Sorry about that.
No, no problem.
I wasn't quite sure how long I'd run for with the translations. If you want, I can load up one of my other talks, but it won't have subtitles. And I can show off something like regex debugger, which is really cool. Do we have a regex debugger talk here?
We did last year, not
last year?
Yeah.
Do you want me to do a brief show off of regex debugger?
Is that going to end in 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
時間がちょっとだけ余ってるので、レゲックスディバッガーっていうもののデモをちょっと見せてくれるそうです。
ありがとう。I will pretty much talk until you throw me off stage. So, when you said lightning talkathon,
Yeah.
Yes, I can do that.
もし懇親会に登録してない方がいて行きたい場合は3個だけ空きができました。
3個の空きはどうするの？
懇親会のページに行って参加するのをやればいいです。ツイッターでリンク貼ってあります。 this require any explanation by me or any translation?
Do you want to do translations?
I
That would be amazing.
try.
I don't know if I am symptomatic or.
That's okay.
If I'm pressing
No, I'm actually setting them up so they mirror each other.
or? Oh.
Here we go. And okay.
これ去年来た人は多分ちょっと見たことあると思うんですよね。正規保険をどういうふうに動いているのかを説明されながら、しながら、デバッグできるっていうツールです。
Okay. So, this sort of leads in with regular expressions. So, regular expressions are awesome. Regular expressions are totemo sugoi desu. Whole 510 regular expressions are awesome. So this is a scary regular expression that that's, you can kind of understand it, but like each individual part you can understand, but as a whole it's very hard.
そういうこれ一つのパーツはなんか分かるかもしれないけど、全体ない人が分かるんですね。
And this is much easier to understand because I've used the X flag and there's comments on the right hand side so I can see what everything is.
でこれだと X フラッグを使って右側に何をしてるかコメントをかけるのでまだ分かります。
So we're passing output from ls-l in this case.
これは ls-l のアウトプット出力をパスしている正規です。
But there's a problem because if I want to know, what's my size, I need to go back here and I need to count. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to count the parentheses.
もしこの中で、どれがサイズ、ファイルサイズ指定しているのかを見る場合には、これでカッコの数を数えて何番目にそのサイズがあるのか見ないといけない。この場合は2、4、5個目にあることをカウントしなきゃいけない。
There's also a problem of what if my parentheses change? Because then all of the numbers will be different. And it gets worse because I might have code that looks like this with a little preamble at the front, and I have no idea what's in there. And once there's something at the front of my regular expression in that variable, I don't know what any of the numbered parentheses are going to be.
もしこれでカッコの数が変わったり場所が変わったりすると全部おかしくなるし、で例えばこれみたいに、変数を一番最初に入れてしまうと、この中にカッコが入っていることも分からず、どうやって直しているかも分からなくなってしまう。
So if you're using Perl 510, which hopefully you are because it's been out for ages, you can do this amazing thing that hopefully you've seen, where you can have named parameters.
もしも天井を使っているのであれば、このマッチした変数のところに名前を付けることができるので、これで大体この問題が解決できます。
Now I always know what my file name is going to be because it lives in a special variable called file name. Or I always know what the size is going to be because I can look it up by its name there.
これは名前で、ルックアップすることができるので、過去の数を出す必要があります。
And it gets better because if I want to, I can build these little regular expression fragments. So I can say, here is what a title looks like, here is what a name looks like, and then I can do things where I can say, hey, I want to search for a title followed by a name, and rather than having to refer to $1, $2, I can refer to things by their actual name. It makes more sense.
でこれだと少しずつ部分ごとに作ってそれを全部続けて、くっつけて使うことができて、でなおかつ順番とかではなく名前で、マッチすることができます。
So one thing if you're working with regular expressions is really, really useful is a new module called regex debugger.
これをデバッグするのにすごく便利なのはレゲックスデバッガーというモジュールです。
And regex debugger, you can actually start from the command line with this little tool called rxrx. So I'm going to do that now and show you how it works.
コマンドラインで rxrx というコマンドがあるので、それを使って、立ち上げることができます。
So here I am, and at the top of this, there's the regular expression which I showed you before. And at the bottom here, I have a line from my directory, an output of ls-l.
これは上の部分がその正規表現で、下の部分がそれに対して、使っている文字列です。
And what I can do here is I can actually walk through and see what's going on. So here it's looking for the start of a string. Here it's looking for something to capture to, and it's capturing to $1 and it's capturing to permissions, so it tells me what the capture variables happen to be.
でこれで、ステップスルーすることができるので、最初まず文字列一番最初にマッチして、今度はドル1と、パーミッションズっていう、名前の入った変数に、マッチして格納されているのが分かります。
And so here we can see it's trying a character class, we can see that that's matched, and then the best part of all, up here after it's matched, it tells me what's inside that match variable. I know what's inside $1, I know what's inside permissions.
Can you go back to 2 steps?
Yes, I can, because I can go backwards as well. If I can remember, is it minus? Yes.
Okay. で、これ今デバッターみたいなので、もうステップバックのできるんですね。元に戻ることができる。スピードフォースとドルスで、ここでマッチして、で、それが終わって、で、その終わった結果が左上にあって、ドル1と、パーミッションズに入が見れる。
So this is fantastic for me seeing how my regular expressions match. I can walk forwards, and I can also run the regular expressions backwards. So if I go too far, I can roll back to see what was there.
で、この同じことを繰り返していけば、どんどんその値が入ってくるのも見えるし、さっき見せてもらったように、元に戻って、やり直すこともできます。
There's also a number of different visualizations I can use. I can apply a heat map, and parts of the regular expression which are taking a long time will show up in red, and those which are taking a short amount of time will show up in blues and greens, nice cool colors.
可視化のオプションもいろいろあって、これは時間がかかる部分が赤で、表されていて、マッチに時間がかからなかった部分が青で表されている。
And this can be a great way to diagnose why is a regular expression running slowly. I can just load it up into RxRx, turn on the heat map, run it to the end, and then look for the hotspots.
で、これを使えば、正規運がどうして遅く待つの時間がかかっているか、そういったことを、どこが時間がかかっているかを簡単に見ることができます。
Now, I think I'm running out of time, but there's a lot more that RxRx can do. You can go forwards, you can go backwards, you can process things in JSON. There's a wonderful help page there, and you can also load this up as a Perl module, the regex debugger module, in your code as well.
で、ちょっと今時間ないんでざーっと言っちゃいますけど、こういったオプションがいろいろあって、可視化のオプションもあれば、JSON で吐き出すとかそういったこともありますので、使おうと思えばモジュールとして、プログラム内で使うこともできます。
So thank you very much for letting me show you regex debugger and RxRx.
以上です。ありがとうございました。